You looking at living in Four Corners, Florida, outside of Orlando? Well, this video is going to be for you because I'm going to talk about the real pros and cons to living in Four Corners here in the Orlando, Florida area. And obviously it's heading west on the floor, and we're going to get really into it and stay to the end because that's what I'm going to go deep into the cons of living in Four Corners. Because guess what? It's not all perfect. Just like every city around the Orlando, Florida area, there are good things and bad things about living in this city, suburb. Look, it can take a lot of things, but we're going to dive into it right now. So the first thing we're going to go to is the pros. So the first pro is Four Corners is located in a pretty decent location, okay? And this is going to vary depending on where you're trying to travel to for your work and things like that. But I will tell you, Four Corners for me is in a great location. I love that it's, it's just off the 4, right? It's technically part of the Kissimmee, the greater Kissimmee area as well when you head on the east side of it. But it's not far from the theme parks. It can have a lot of great communities. Like, the location is great, but the cool thing is because of where it is located, you can just hop on the 4, especially if you're trying to head towards Tampa, to like me, and you want to get that hockey game in, or you want to go to Clearwater Beach, things like that. Like, that's the one thing I love about Four Corners is the fact that I like the location of it. But obviously, it really depends on where you're trying to go for work, whether that's going to be a pro or a con. Now, this wasn't one of the communities I really noticed when we first came out here, because for some reason, when people start to head away from Orlando, heading west on the 4, you tend to, at least I did, we tend to stay south of the 4. And, that starts to hit people where it's like, you don't always realize you have Four Corners, and then you have Horizon heading north of that. So it's one of those areas where it can be a great place to live, and also it can potentially be affordable at times, which gets into our second pro, which is the cost of living. So Four Corners tends to be a little bit cheaper. Now, that's with a grain of salt, because Florida is not the cheap place it used to be, and definitely not Central Florida or the Orlando area. It's just not cheap like it used to be 10 years ago. But Four Corners tends to be a little bit better than, say, your Kissimmee and things like that. But it's all variable. It depends on what you're looking for. Are you looking for a big mansion, or are you looking for a condo, small home, things like that? It really depends on what you're looking for to see if that's really going to make sense for Four Corners. I will tell you, Four Corners to me tends to have less options, and it depends on the type of year and things going on. But in the current market, it tends to be a little bit less for sale or for rent, but that's not always the case. Like I said, it depends on what you're looking for. So it can maybe have a ton of options at a good price, whether it's rent or purchasing, or at the same time, it could be, a little bit out there. But, cost of living also, again, it depends on where you're traveling to and from work, because if it's going to be far away, then this isn't going to be a pro for you. This probably could be a con. But if you're looking to kind of get outside the Orlando area, you want to find those nicer neighborhoods, and you're not looking to be in the dead of the city, well, then, hey, this could be a great option for you. And the cost of living tends to be a little bit better than, say, if you're like in the downtown or things like that. So, or like Winter Garden and things like that. So it does have a little bit better stuff to it. And Horizon West, because there's a lot of new construction, tends to be a little bit more expensive. And Four Corners, the great thing is just closer to the 4, so it's easier to hop on. So here, that price and the distance can be a benefit for a lot of people. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. I just want to take a quick second to let you know that we love dropping videos for you every single week, just like this, to help people like yourself make the move to Orlando, just like I did years ago. And also, while you're watching this video and we drop information from you, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. But more importantly, if you're looking to make a move out here, obviously, my name is Cameron Hodge with eXp Realty, and what I specialize with, me and my team, is helping people like yourself make that move to Orlando. But not just move here, actually move here and help you with the decisions that you need to make sure that you have a good life guaranteed when you get here. Because no one wants you to get here to just make a bad decision and live in the wrong area and not make those right choices. So if that's you and you need help making that plan when making a move out here, this number popping up below is how you can get a hold of me and the team. Or if that's not fast enough, down in the description, there is a Zoom link where you can schedule a one-on-one Zoom call with me. We can sit down and create that perfect plan for you. And again, thank you so much for watching the video, and let's get back to it. The third is, it has a lot of great schools and jobs. Now, this obviously is very variable, and that's why if you want to get accurate school information, I have it all linked at Orlando Tampa Living and that's my website that I hold with our team, and we put a whole section on schools in there. It'll take you. You have 2 locations in there. It'll take you to the state website for schools, and then it will also take you to a separate party website that gives you ratings on schools, because obviously it depends what you're doing. Dude, Florida, just like every southern state, has a lot of private, public, charter, hybrid schools. There's a lot of options going on in Four Corners, so you want to make sure you are educated on every single school in the area. But I think Four Corners tends to have some great school options depending on what you're trying to do with your kids. At least for me and my family, I think it has a lot of great options, and that's just my take on it, just my opinion. But do your own research, of course. And in terms of job opportunities, like, again, it really depends on what you do. If you're working at the parks or you're working in a job that's related to tourism and things like that, Four Corners is in it. It's a great opportunity to consider because you're not traveling too far to the parks. Now, it's not like you're right next to them. Okay, so I'm not going to say it's the best driving community out there for parks and tourism, things like that, but you're not as far as you would be in a lot of other places. Like if you're trying to live in North Orlando, like Lake Mary, you're going to be in a lot of mortal pain if your industry is all related to those parks. But in terms of job opportunities, like, it's not the worst. So coming from San Diego before this, I mean, it's not, I've seen people make like an hour and a half driving to work and things like that. And if you're living in Four Corners, you're most often not going to see that. And now if you're working for like the self-defense industries and things like that, like, it's gonna be a little bit driver heading into the city, and that might kind of get a little old, and you might want to look at Kissimmee and things like that. But for a lot of you out there, I think Four Corners can be a great community to be near a lot of job opportunities and some decent schools for the location that it is in. The next pro we have is the beautiful surroundings. So I love the area around Four Corners. So I'm not a city person. I mean, going to downtown's great. I mean, it's fun to visit with the kids and stuff like that, and Wonder Works Museum and heading to the theme parks and all that's great. But Four Corners, while it's suburbs and it's not like you're out in the middle of nowhere, I like the surrounding area. I love the community that is there. I don't feel as claustrophobic as I do in a lot of communities. Again, I'm not an HOA guy, and I'm not living in the middle of nowhere kind of guy. And Four Corners does have those opportunities there. Now, it might not be as much as like other communities, but I do think that I love the scenery and just like how Four Corners is, which takes me into the next pro, which is like the sense of community. I think Four Corners has a very strong sense of community around that area. Now, it's always hit and miss, and like it comes to any moving project, like, you have to make sure you reach out to us for help, because look, the reality is that there are a lot of communities and neighborhoods even in this area that I'm talking about, and if you're not getting on the ground, you gotta make sure you find someone to get on the ground for you, because while I said there's a strong sense of community, every neighborhood and street is different, so you want to make sure you're getting the best benefit for you. But I think the sense of community is very strong. But to be honest with you, you can take my opinion with a grain of salt. Coming from California, I think almost any community in Florida has a stronger sense of community than those people out there. And it's not that they're bad or anything wrong with that. It's just most communities, especially Four Corners, they just have a strong sense of community. I have a deep opinion that when you live in an area that has hurricanes and storms, you tend to be more friends with your neighbors because you never know if you're going to need them in a time of need or crisis. It's just my opinion, but it's what I've observed living in a lot of places across the United States and the world. But the sense of community is strong, and if you pick the right area, I think this could be a great option for you, especially those who maybe don't have a $500,000 budget, right? Maybe you want to just be in a good community with decent schools, a good stepping stone to step off. I think Four Corners hits that in a lot of ways. Now, that takes me into the last pro, which is going to be, the range of housing options. So you have apartments, you have single family, you have some luxury sprinkled in there. It has a lot of options like any other community in Orlando. So you're not having to be like, oh, it's only single family, or there's no apartments, there's nothing for rent. You got a mix of everything here in Four Corners. And I think that's a great benefit because, especially if you're in a situation where you might like the community, sometimes, certain communities around Orlando, like, you might not be able to get everything you're looking for that's within your budget. In Four Corners, you're going to find a little mix of everything. And depending on what you're looking for, hey, you're going to find it here. Now, obviously, when it comes to getting land and things like that, you tend to head like outside Four Corners a little bit if you're really looking for some max acreage, or you might head more into Polk County, which is heading south. But ultimately, there's a lot of options going on in Four Corners. And if you're looking for something and you have a decent budget, well, decent is in like you're not looking for like that $500 a month like shack, then you're going to be in good luck when it comes to Four Corners. But that wraps up the pros. Now we got to get into the cons, because look, like every community around Orlando, there are good and there are bad things about every single sub-city around Orlando, all the way from Lake Mary to heading to Polk County like Davenport, Haines City, Kissimmee, St. Cloud. They all have their good and their bad. And that's why I'm starting to do these more city-specific ones, because there are so many different communities around Orlando that, hey, it's not just general Orlando. You got to figure out what community fits you best. And that's what I went through, and that's what I'm happy to do here for you. One of the first cons I'm going to talk about is traffic. Now, Orlando's a city, right? I think every community is going to deal with traffic, but I have to bring it up because Four Corners is not immune from that. And the problem is depending how far towards Orlando you have to drive, like you're going to hit traffic, you know, from the theme parks to everyone heading into the city for work. Traffic's going to be there. And some days it's not going to be that great. And you have to be aware that, hey, if you have to travel a decent distance, it's not just time against you in the distance. It's the traffic and the congestion that can really eat into your drive time. And if you're someone like me who doesn't like driving too much into the city if I don't have to, you really have to weigh in like how often do I have to go to the city, and especially the airport. So that even the airport's gonna be a little bit farther of a drive from here, right? Like it could be 45 minutes plus, depending how bad traffic is. Okay, so you have to make sure you're aware with how much you're willing to drive and be away from the city, especially if you need to work and things like that. So that can definitely be a major con, because that traffic, once you start hitting Champions Gate forward, it can just be a real killer sometimes. And there are definitely days where if I don't have to, I don't want to. Again, not a huge people person when it comes to dealing with crowds and traffics and things like that. And while I love living in the area, hey, maybe that could be a killer for you. So you have to be aware this community might not be that fit if you have to travel so far for it. Another thing I need to mention as well is obviously Four Corners is, you know, very tourism heavy. And what does that mean? Well, if they try and keep a tab like any other city around Orlando on short-term rentals and things like that, it is something that you are in a community that is, you know, still in the line of the tourism, and you're not far from the parks. So if you're looking to be able to kind of get tucked away from the crowds and things like that, like I don't know if it's always something that's done in this community, because it is, you know, closer to the parks and say like your Davenport, Haines City, or heading more into Polk County, that you might still see crowds and things like that. And you got to be careful, because obviously while there is regulation on Airbnbs, guess what? It doesn't mean people follow the rules, okay? So you're still going to have people that are going to get away or try and get away with doing short-term rentals on homes and things like that, even if they don't have a permit, or even if the community or HOA they're in doesn't allow it. It happens. I see it all the time. And be aware that when you're in a community that is still closer to the parks, it's going to be more common than in a lot of other communities. So if that's something you're not aware of, or, you know, it might just be, you know, be careful, be aware of where you're buying. Again, it just comes into that process. We wanted a place with no HOA, and we wanted, you know, over a half acre of land. We wanted some space, and we found that. But we have to be aware of what your needs are and make sure that you're not putting yourself into a situation you're just not going to be happy with. And also, obviously, it's Orlando, like I said before. So communities are going to have short-term rentals. So you have to be aware of where you're buying, where you're getting into, and does that community have a lot of short-term rentals? And a quick look on Airbnb is going to tell you that pretty quick. The next con is obviously, like I said before, you want to do your research on public schools. And while there are some great options in this area, guess what? They're not all perfect. And if you can't afford a private school, or you're looking for a very specific type of school, they might not be the top quality around the area. So you really have to make sure, especially if you have those kids. I tell you, I didn't do this when we first moved out here, because our son was like not old enough. Our oldest was not old enough for school yet. And I'm very lucky that I got where we did decide to move into, because it could have, oh my God, I still feel like an idiot for not looking more into schools when making the move to Orlando, because it's so important. Again, new parent, my you know, like your oldest child is the one that teaches you everything, and man, I feel bad sometimes he has to go through it, because you feel like you know something, and then you get caught with that next thing. And that for me, that was searching for good schools. We got lucky where we ended up living. And like I said, there are a lot of options for between private, charter, hybrid schools where they let you go in person and also online if you're a family that travels a lot. But you have to make sure that you know what you're getting into, because like I said, it's a great community and there are good school options. But I'm not going to say when you look at like the public information, it's not the most densely populated good school area. Like you look at like Lake Mary and those communities, like they tend to do pretty good on schools, but they're far away from the parks. So again, if that's something you want to do, you got to weigh it in, because it might not fit what you're looking for. Or maybe you're one of those people that are homeschooling your kids. Hey, God bless you. Man, we've toyed with it. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to get to that point. It's pretty nerve-wracking to make that giant jump, but hey, maybe that won't even be an option for you, and that's negligible to best. And the last con I want to bring up is that the area is spread out. Now, what does that mean? So we're all going to have different opinions of what the community is when it comes to being spread out. Now, what we're going to compare it to is this, okay? So obviously we have the city of Orlando and the sub-cities inside of it, and I'm just going to rope them all together into like a city living, all right? But when you move away to like your Kissimmee, your Winter Garden, your Dr. Phillips, those are more suburbs. You got a lot of stuff nearby and things like that. But again, Four Corners, it's a little more spread out, like your Davenport, things like that, Point Siena. So it's a little more spread out, which for me, if you're like me, hey, it's awesome. I'm like, hey, I don't care if I have to drive to a little bit farther to a store. I'm okay with that. But it is spread out. So it's not like you're going like a minute away to get certain stores. Now, you can, like there are stores and stuff there. So that's not what I'm saying. But you're a little more spread out. So if you like to feel like you're close-knit communities and like suburbs, or if you want to be closer to the city where you feel like that vibe and that life, it might not be for you. So you have to weigh the options. And like I said, it's not the only community that is out here in that direction that has those amenities. Like you can check Davenport is a community that's really putting a lot of effort into it. And I think it has a lot of potential in the coming 5 to 10 years. And it used to get the bad rep because it was part of Polk County, but Four Corners is, the one that's kind of already established. Like it's already there. And if you choose the right community there, it can be great, but realize it's a little bit spread out. So getting back to the 4, depending on how north you go, heading towards Horizon West, like you might have to drive a little bit to the 4, or you might have to, take a little bit of side streets to get back to the main roads, to get back to the 4. Like it all depends on where you want to live, because it is a little bit spread out. But again, if you're looking for that, then that's going to be a pro. It's not going to be a con. But if you're looking for, like that city vibe, hey, I don't know if it quite hits that. To me, I love it. But if that's your personality and that's what you're really looking for, then it might not check that box. So be aware of that when you're looking to do the area. Now, like I already said before, but I'm going to say it again. If you're looking to move out here and you do need that support, me and my team are here and dedicated to help you make that move out here, especially if you got kids and stuff like that. Like I know it, I breathe it, I've made a lot of the mistakes. I already gave you the one about not researching school. And down below, there's always going to be ways to get a hold of us, or our website where we always put in updated information. But again, this number popping up below is how you can get a hold of me and the team. You can call, text, or email, or if you want to go to the front of the line, Zoom call down below. Go ahead and schedule it. Like, I love helping you make the move out here because it is one of the hardest processes. But man, if you're like me, you want to get out here and you want to have a better life. And I want to make sure you get here with the least amount of stress and have the best life when you get here in an area that you not only like, but love. So I hope you get value in this video. I hope I give you some insights into whether Four Corners is for you. And if you want, you can always comment down below and make sure you subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.